Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. I, Nazia, welcome to all of you in first panel discussion of 33rd AGM of PSDE titled Agricultural Reforms, Modernization and Cluster-Based Agro-Business Development. To conduct the session, first of all, I invite Dr. Asad Zaman, Vice Chancellor, PIDE, to please come on the stage. The chairman of the session, Mr. Shoaib Ahmed Siddiqui. He is basically civil engineering from UET Lahore. He did LLB, LLM, Executive MBA, Masters in Social Science Development from Birmingham University, and still he is eager to learn. He stood fourth in Sargodha board, which was covering almost half of Punjab. He believes in learning from cradle to grave with diverse background, and he is a Senate member of Birmingham University. And now, he is also Secretary Planning, Development and Reforms. Welcome, sir. To moderate the discussion, we have Mr. Stephen Davies. Welcome, sir. Stephen Davies is in IFPRI, Senior Research Fellow and Program Leader for the Pakistan Strategic Sport Program, Islamabad. He is Professor Emeritus Department of Agriculture and Resource Economics, Colorado State University, where he served as chair of the department from 2005 to 2011. His research on Pakistan has focused on agricultural policy, computable general equilibrium models, and water resources. Prior to joining PSSP, he worked as an economist on the Friends of Democratic Pakistan's Water Sectors Task Force and has been active in the recent national water policy discussions. The panelists for the session are Mr. Muhammad Ejaz Qureshi. Dr. Ejaz Qureshi is the Research Program Manager for the Agricultural Development Policy Program, Australian Center for International Agricultural Research, which he currently has 12 projects in 10 countries in the Indo-Pacific region, including India, Pakistan, Mongolia, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Fiji. Prior to joining ACIAR, he worked at Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization, Australian Bureau of Agriculture and Resource Economics, James Cook University and the University of Queensland, and had adjunct positions and affiliations in the Fenner School of Environment and Society and the Crawford School of Public Policy at the Australian National University. Dr. Qureshi has more than 20 years experience dealing with natural resource management and associated policies and has published about 100 scientific papers, including journal articles, book chapters, and conference papers, including on water management, environmental management, economic modeling, mathematical modeling, agriculture and land use policy, water policy, food security policy, and forest policy. He is the participant of a few CSIR awards, including the Land and Water Chief's High Impact Studies Award and the Strategic Excellence Lookout Award in 2007. He also received the Social and Economic Science Programs Award in 2012 and was offered the CSIRO Julius Carrier Award in 2013. And he is Manager Agriculture Development Policy, Australia. The second discussant is Mr. Mubarik AIi. Mr. Mubarik AIi is ex-member Planning Commission, and now he's a World Bank consultant, and he also worked as Chief Executive Punjab Agricultural Research Board. He also worked for World Bank, World Vegetable, IFPRI, and USAID. Marcel Stallen is also a discussant. He belongs to Netherlands. He has studied cluster development. He belongs to Wageningen University, and now he is chief technical officer in Balochistan. The Chief Technical Advisor and Project Manager in Balochistan. The last person, Xiaobo Zhang, he is Professor in National School of Development, Peking University, and he is citizen of China. Zhang earned BS in mathematics from National University China, MS in Economics from Tianjin University of Economics and Finance, China, and MS and PhD in Applied Economics and Management from Cornell University in January 2000. Zhang joined IFPRI in 1998. He has established widely in the fields of economics, growth, income distribution, public investment, and rural industrialization in China and other developing countries. He is a co-editor of Chinese Economic Review. He was selected as the president of Chinese Economist Society from 2005 to 2006. So please, sir, it's over to you.
Yes, please start the session. As moderator, I'll just welcome everybody to the first panel session. I want to thank the Secretary and the Vice Chancellor for coming to chair and sit at the head table, and the esteemed discussants, fellow researchers, students, ladies and gentlemen, salam alaikum and good late morning, maybe early afternoon. We're going to, I don't want to spend much time but in introducing this, but a very senior agricultural economist, John Mellor, anytime he comes to Pakistan, he looks at the agriculture in Pakistan and he says, you know, Pakistan should look like the Central Valley of California. Highly specialized, highly productive, horticulture oriented agriculture. And that's a ways off, as I think we all know. But today we're going to talk about things that may start some steps down that road, and I hope there are steps that can continue and accelerate as we go along. With that, though, we'll start with a presentation on research issues, because lots of us here are researchers, and then we'll move into 3 presentations on clusters, coming at it from a variety of ways. So, Ejaz Qureshi will do the first presentation.
Assalamu alaikum. It is my great pleasure to be part of this event. In fact, I had no plan. 6 months ago, when I planned to go on leave, including do some other activities, I wasn't sure, I did not know about this thing, but when Professor Usman mentioned to me and other colleagues, it was, I humbly accepted this. This is a great humbling experience for me, I think. It's a privilege for me to be part of this event. So I would like to share some of my views about this, what the agriculture sector issues are in Pakistan. But before that, it's of course importance, you all know, and then I'll be talking about some agriculture research issues, particularly the policy focused issues. Okay, so very quickly, you all know it's very important for the economy of Pakistan, brings lots of foreign earnings, and it also, the major portion of our rural economy is actually dependent on the agriculture sector. But if we look the sector-wise, the share in national GDP, it's kind of going down. But despite that, the employment, if we're looking, the employment is still about 50%. Agriculture in the total factor productivity, the graph shows that it's not that, doesn't look that great. And this is the figure I'm sharing here. The colleagues, IFPRI, they published in the food hunger index. These are the different countries, how they progressed in terms of reducing hunger in their countries, and the Pakistan in that country, and particularly compared with Vietnam, where both countries started about the same pace about 10-15 years ago. Now Vietnam got down to like close to 5% or less, close to 0 as in terms of the hunger index. Pakistan is still pretty high. So these are some of the issues. And this figure shows you reasonably clear what it's talking about the global hunger index and Pakistan and Vietnam. So you can see that how these two countries are looking. And this again, 4 countries I picked: Pakistan, China, Vietnam, and Bangladesh. So you can see that in terms of that hunger index, it's still about 33% Pakistan compared to Vietnam, which is likewise. And now recent figures are showing that it's close to 0 in case of Vietnam. And I particularly know of the Vietnam because I also have some projects in Pakistan, and pretty impressed with the way the country has progressed. So what are the issues? There's stagnating crop yields with wide gaps between progressive and average farmers, poor quality and inadequate supply of inputs and lack of infrastructure, lots of other issues. And I don't want to go in that, and I'm sure you know those. Okay, so one of the reasons, and many of the authors, including from Pakistan, Professor Dr. Shoaib Malik, he put together nicely. This one is showing that the total number of under 5 acre farms has more than kind of the triple since 1960. That's one of the major, because the farmers would not have the economy of size or scale, and that's critical when we talking about the competitiveness in terms of international market profitability. This table shows where Pakistan stands in, as for the different crops are concerned, the cotton, potato, wheat, and when we're looking at those, I mean, how much the yield gap is, that shows. There is also large variability within the country as for the yield is concerned, I mean, in different agroclimatic zones. This figure is like, it shows kind of there is a limited diversification, and that's pretty critical. Many countries, and in particular those where I have projects, there we see some kind of diversification taking place. That's very critical for the stability of income and also to reduce some risk. And this figure, basically again from what it shows, that the water availability versus the population. Population is increasing, water is going down, and it's going to be significant issues, especially when we talk about the climate change. Okay, so now coming to this, we know that agriculture GDP, if there is an increase in agriculture GDP, it helps in reducing the poverty, and this figure clearly shows there is a kind of clear linkage between those two, the variables. Okay, so now coming to this growth in public expenditure, research and development, and you can see that the countries, or the example I was giving, Vietnam, the growth in Vietnam is about 20%. But in Pakistan is not that great. So that's one of the factors, which is probably, but of course the other reasons as well. Number of persons removed from poverty for a given public investment. You can see like the agriculture research and development, how much the roads are reduced, education, and there is a clear evidence that research in agriculture development makes significant contribution in terms of reducing poverty. And one of our projects in Indonesia also shows that kind of thing. Then this effect of 1% increase in yields on the number of people living in less than $1 per day, and you can see again there is a significant change is happening. This figure shows the agriculture science and technology, those the indicators basically. You can see Bangladesh, Cambodia, China. So there is a kind of like, it's not that clear coming here, but I mean, if we talk about the year, the China, with thousands of dollars they are spending, but compared to Pakistan, if I can show here, it's about like a $3,000 per capita, those the individual, the spending, but that's one of the factors I'm kind of sharing with you. Okay, so this figure shows, again, it hasn't come through reasonably well, but what it's showing that the agriculture research and development spending as a share of agriculture GDP. So here in Pakistan, I mean, if we talk about those countries like the China, it's about 6-7%, but in Pakistan, it's pretty not that great. Okay, so these two figures, I mean, tables, they show that the public expenditure in agriculture and comparative yield of key crops. I mean, you can see there is a kind of like the gap is there, and that's what we're talking about, the efficiency improvement. So now very quickly on this, the policy analysis. This is one of the area. Of course, the research is needed on other biological focused, agronomic focus, soil-related issues. But the good agriculture policies are fundamental to progress in the economic, social, and environmental spheres. And we know that, and there is a clear evidence that to have implement those good policies, empirical evidence is critical. The objective-based assessment is essential. Because it's generally low cost with high and immediate beneficial impacts. And the other reason is that if we implement some of the policies, the long-term cost could be significant compared to the investment we make in doing that kind of policy analysis. We came up with some, I don't do research these days because of this heavy management, but we did put together a paper which published in the food security was like, we came up with these 3 types of policies, like supplies-related policies, demand-related policies, market-related policies, and looking those supply-related policies like the more rural infrastructure, agriculture, research and development extension, institutions for agriculture, resource management, farm input, producing, and then also demand side kind of those, the policies, income growth, development, education, and market-related policies. And if we cluster those, what sort of policies are essential when we really want to move forward? So you can see, from the top, because of I think the light is not coming clear, and I can see reasonably well over there. But if, yes, perhaps, but this light is probably. Yeah. So you can see those. The countries have the major focus is the food security. And sometimes there is also recently, especially with this, the food, the price, when there was an issue in 2008, 2009, around that time, the self-sufficiency became kind of like a major goal of many countries. But that also comes at a cost. But whatever is that the countries have those, but doing that kind of analysis, trying to understand what's going to be the cost, what's going to be the benefits. And then we have this food safety is becoming another key area now, especially in countries where and Pakistan is one of those countries, the emerging economy. And food policy analysis is required, because when we talk about this improving the food safety, it comes with a cost. Whether we want to export those produce to other countries or even for a middle income country, in the whole quarantine system, it requires understanding of those costs and benefits is crucial. Other area is the governance of water use and management, and I'll be sharing some of the examples we have related to those projects. Agriculture mechanization input policy, research development extension policy, and number of other policies. But at the same time, we can see these other, we can't ignore this, the forest policy, conservation, plantation, protection, land use and management policy, climate change policy, environmental conservation policy, wetland, groundwater management, salinity, and all these issues, they affect actually when we talk about the food security, whether within one area, one catchment, or one district, or in province or whole country. But again, now we also talking about this inclusive rural transformation, because the countries are progressing. The agriculture sector contribution is going down as far the GDP is concerned, because other sectors are growing. And it's quite natural, because if we see other countries, it's happening there as well. Rural infrastructure development policies essential to understand what sort of things, consequences going to be. Cooperative cluster enterprise system development, all those things are essential. So what ACIAR is doing, very quickly on this, is it's a statutory authority within the Australian government's Foreign Affairs and Trade portfolio. My CEO reports to the Foreign Minister of Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And it's a research funding body, and we manage research. Okay, so what's our mission? To achieve more productive and sustainable agriculture systems for the benefit of developing countries, including Pakistan. Agriculture includes forestry, fisheries, and main focus is food security, livelihood, smallholders, sustainable systems. What we do, as mentioned earlier, we commission research, we have bilateral or multilateral projects, we pilot development activities, conduct impact assessment, communicate, and we also manage, the funding goes to Australia provides funding for the international centers such as International Food Policy Research Institute or others. Okay, so we have this kind of, we believe in Australia's innovation system, which is on top. You can see this, the universities, the CSRO, and then we also have this, bring these international CGR centers and Australian universities, and we try to help the other countries. The program I manage is one of the research 12 research programs, and the focus is more micro-scale and micro-scale policy dimensions. And sometimes we have these standalone projects, sometimes these very policy-focused projects. And the projects help understand the commonly used agriculture policy alternatives, things like regional globalization trade, supply-demand situation, what's actually happening, whether price is going to be up, and doing some kind of simulation modeling, trying to understand what's going to be the situation, okay? Regulatory reforms, water institutions. Okay, so the policy projects we only have in those countries, and Pakistan is one of those where there's a political environment in the recipient country, and there is a receptiveness, appetite of the policy work, and the depth of analysis is essential, should not crowd out, and credibility of not only Australian researchers, but also the country collaborators. Because no matter whatever you do, you come up with a very great piece of work, but if those people don't have the credibility, it doesn't work. Okay, and then the policy, it needs to be relevant, and policy analysis is effectively promoted through appropriate channels, because if we do good work and if it comes a nice glossy report, it sits in a shelf, it doesn't add any value, so we need to have that kind of communication. Okay, priority countries and funds allocation, it's just a coincidence that Pakistan got a slightly bigger chunk because it's the policy. So what I was saying here, that graph shows that how much the funds are actually allocated for different, and this is only just a coincidence, the program I manage, it's also the government's request, and the Pakistan government's the keen interest in the policy work. And I would also commend the Pakistan High Commissioner, Her Excellency Naila Chauhan, the interaction she has with the Australian Center, and that also helps in bringing research for the country. Okay, and just some projects we have in different countries, but the way we're doing, the very first one is assessing farmer response to climate change, and this is the project we have in Vietnam and China, the climate change, so how going to be impacts of the climate change. We just finished. Effective implementation of payment for environmental services, as I mentioned, the nature conservation and those issues, and we recently finished in Laos, basically is trying to understand what where there are no markets, how we can use some kind of tools and techniques and come up with demand functions as well as supply functions, and help policymakers coming up with. And couple of other projects, we have the strengthening incentives or improved grassland management. It's a big issue in China, the dust storms. So we similar kind of projects we're starting in India and in Bangladesh. And we hope to have a small project in Pakistan because of smog and issues, the nature, the conservation practices, because farmers don't have the benefits. If we want to account for those benefits, we need to come up with some solutions. Just some other examples, but I'll be very happy. I mean, just one thing I would like to mention, that if you are interested in any of those projects, those numbers, like the ADP 2016-043, if you just put that in ACIAR system, you'll know everything about the project, its objective, where we're doing, what kind of work we're doing, or what stage is. And with this note, I stop, and I will be very happy to answer any questions later. Thanks.
That was a very good tour of the many issues that exist in the agricultural sector. I think, without trying to go back over too many of them, the research and development relative to the needs and relative to regional countries is very deficient. We know that quite a number of provinces are trying to improve this. It's essential to get growth in agriculture, to get as Dr. Qureshi showed, to get these kinds of nutrition indicators to be better, to poverty to go down, and things like that. So I think in all the rest of what we'll say today, we need to keep in mind this context of the many challenges in the agricultural sector, but lots of opportunities too. So thank you very much for actually sticking to time. We forced him to stay within 15 minutes, and he did it. So let's give him an extra hand for that. Okay, so we're going to rearrange things a little bit and go from the general sort of an overview of benefits and challenges in clusters that Marcel Stallen is going to present, and then we'll give some applications that are more specific.
Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and distinguished panel colleagues. I would like to zoom in on one of the issues that were mentioned by my predecessor. It's about clusters. It's one of the factors that will enhance your competitiveness, and I would like to utilize some examples to illustrate that. First of all, my name is Marcel Stallen. I'm working for the Food and Agriculture Organization in Balochistan. And indeed, I would love to talk about our programs in Balochistan, but I promised the chairman we talk about clusters today. And clusters are also relevant to Balochistan, but at a much smaller scale. I'll explain about that later. It's quite an honor to be here and to come up with some examples from my previous life. Previously, I worked for Wageningen University, the Agriculture Economics Research Institute, and we studied, among others, cluster development all around the world, because it's really a trend. And what I notice is that Pakistan is somehow lagging behind. The presentation is about, first, a definition of a cluster, according to the World Bank, according to Mr. Michael Porter. He analyzed clusters extensively. I would like to come up with some examples and why certain clusters are successful and others not. Then come up with a general idea, a kind of a trend, how clusters over the time will develop, and then indeed make the link to Pakistan. The World Bank defines a cluster as a complex where primary producers, food processors, service providers work together on a certain product or a range of products. It's about a concentration, clustering of all kinds of complementary companies, but also education and research institutes, seed companies. They're all acting together in a coordinated way within a cluster. And I'll come up with some examples. And according to Michael Porter, and I feel inspired by him to a certain extent, the way he's analyzing competitiveness, it's about creating a competitive edge in the market by efficient cooperation between companies. So keep in mind, it's about clustering, complementary functions, from food processing, logistics, services, quality control, primary producers. It's about adding value to primary products and doing that in a competitive way. It's about logistics efficiency, but also selecting a strategic location for your cluster with upstream and downstream connections, connections with your consumers or markets and with your producers. And it's about, and I'll come back on that in the situation of Pakistan, effective cooperation between the government and private companies, with companies in the driver's seat indeed, and the government playing a facilitating role. Forgive me, because of my nationality, I happen to be a Dutch citizen. I take some examples from the Netherlands, an example from India and China, but I'm a little bit biased to the success of our own clusters in the Netherlands. And in fact, the Netherlands is restructuring all its agriculture centers into clusters, whether it's on fruits, whether it's on vegetables, whether it's on flowers. They try to put all the activities together in a cluster. And I would like to use the example of floriculture in Aalsmeer and a relatively new agri-cluster which was actively pursued by the government in Venlo, and that's about fruits, vegetables, and other commodities, and mushrooms, not to forget. And our clusters are built on the principles which I've just meant to you. It's about complementarity, strategic locations, logistics efficiency, and these are all factors to make a cluster successful. Let's have a look at our floriculture cluster. And it's a very, very tiny place at the map, but about 60% of all the trade worldwide in flowers, ornamental plants, it's channeled through the Netherlands. It's imported, it's exported. We have quite a few producers in the Netherlands, but the majority it's about trade. And I'll explain you why. All the services in a radius of about 25 kilometers, from seeds to quality control to fertilizer, whatever primary producers, they are centered in Aalsmeer. And the central trading place of the world, it's Aalsmeer, plays a pivotal role. If you cannot orchestrate the trade, if you cannot orchestrate import-export flows, you're not going to be successful as a cluster. And mind you, clustering is not a kind of a recipe or a remedy to support a non-competitive sector. You need to have certain advantages, you need to be innovative, you need to be a leader in the world anyway, and then clustering will add a lot of value. And the European Union, they realize that. They support all kinds of clustering in France, in Italy, in any country. Because, just for a good understanding, clusters are not only in agriculture successful, whether it is the leather industry in Italy, whether it is Silicon Valley in the United States, they're all built on the same principles. Companies working together and having all the services let's say, concentrated. So I just want to show you, this is the biggest trading place in the world. It covers something like 200 football fields. It's all covered, it's all air conditioned. And flowers from Costa Rica, from Kenya and other places, they're coming in at night. And the next morning they're on the way to Germany, Russia, whatever, or Italy, by plane or by air. Increasingly, those flowers don't even reach Aalsmeer. It's all nowadays digitally. You don't have to bring it physically. You can order everything online nowadays. And like we say, it's about innovation, being a leader all the way and innovate your sector. Another example, which I briefly walk through with you, it's about Venlo. And you saw that it's in the southern part of the Netherlands, and within a radius of 40 kilometers, there are 25, 30 million German customers. And again, the strategic location, having producers close by, and your consumers. And again, having all the services from banana ripening to packaging to service providers at one place. I'll show you a photo. And indeed, all those clusters are supported by either the province, the national government, or by city support. Yeah. This was developed in about 20 years, and it's quite successful because new companies in particular, they would like to establish their company over there. It's about having excellent road connections, all facilitated by the government. It's having waterway connections, and there are railway connections. And this is a strategic location. And if I try to summarize that, it's about producers in the neighborhood from France, the Netherlands, the UK. They bring their goods by road or waterway to Venlo. It's cross-docked, it's processed, it's either packed again, and the next day, it's on its way to markets in Germany, all over the EU. The slogan is, where everything comes together. And that's a cluster all about. India did its homework very well, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I have shown quite a few Indian government staff and farmers around in the Netherlands. And in fact, it was quite annoying, because all they did was just making photos, hearing, interviewing people, and in the end, they said, we can do it ourselves. These principles are not rocket science. And India, according to the, let's say, the principles that are used elsewhere, is now also rolling out quite a few what they call agro-parks, or integrated agribusiness and food processing zones, whatever it's in a name. We call them green ports. Doesn't make any difference. These are clusters. So it's about connecting, again, farmers with a central hub where all the cross-docking, where all the processing is done, and sending it either for the domestic markets or for the export markets, and to do that in an efficient way. The Indians have a slogan. They say, this is to empower our farmers to find a place where they can market their products, where they can add value, but also to attract foreign companies coming in and settle up their business at those places. China, I would say they are the masters in copying and pasting. They came with dozens to Europe, and nowadays they are setting up their own agro-food parks around Shanghai, like all their major cities. And what they do is, they want to set up what they call green agro-parks, where they use also waste material of one sector to feed into horticulture, for example. They combine fish and tomato production. They try to minimize waste. But what they also do, and that's completely planned by the government, they have processing food parks. Around Shanghai, you find concentrations of where only processing companies are allowed to settle. And that makes it efficient. Specialization is one of the key words. Okay. Be aware, as Pakistan, that all over the world, these kind of clusters get stronger and stronger, and they dominate markets. In the Netherlands, quite a few are under construction. There is an EU master plan connecting all the hubs within Europe, with good roads, with railway connections, bringing our flowers by train to Italy, by train to Russia. It's all facilitated by the EU, makes them very competitive. In India, they're working on it. Kenya is an excellent example where all the flower producers have combined forces, a little bit inspired by Dutch companies, but they effectively work together. And the question is, what about Pakistan? I'll come to that next. Yeah. The way we have analyzed clusters in 3 steps, the development of a cluster, is as follows. And it's very simplified. It's kind of a theory, which I've never published. But anyway, it's about producers and a trader, a retailer, working together, setting up their own facility. That's where it starts. Market-oriented producers, innovative, achieving economies of scale, because that's where it starts, being big enough to dominate the markets. And having a concentration of producers, having a distribution center attracts other companies. But also, retailers might find it increasingly interesting to work with one trader and one distribution center. And to facilitate a year-round supply, you need to have import products. There's no harm, as long as you can orchestrate the trade. Next, it's also about export, building the business. So that's what I call the first stage, where companies and traders work together. Yes. The next stage, once you have all these companies together, it attracts service providers. Because why to have a fragmented sector? If you have everything together, it will attract banana ripening companies. It will attract even biological control companies. It attracts service providers doing the mechanics, cold chain facilities. So all these things, activities are clustered, what I call in the second stage from 5 till 10 years. And last but not least, it's about innovativeness. Wageningen University has subsidiaries, has research center in those agro-clusters. They work directly together with companies to improve their business, as long as they don't distort the markets. and that keeps us ahead of our competitors. It's about education, advisory, sophisticated seed companies, they're all working together. Good. Given the time, I would like to skip 2 slides. What's in it for companies? It's quite obvious that companies who can work in the neighborhood of other companies, who can specialize, are doing better than others. They're having better margins, they're having better quality control. So what's in it for companies? But mind you, there are also quite a few benefits for the society as a whole. Less transport. If you can bring everything in and the next day it goes out again, you have less carbon dioxide emission. Efficiency. If everything is controlled in a certain area, you can better control your food safety and other issues. It's about less waste. But also, we don't want companies scattered all over the country. If you focus them and you concentrate them, you can control all kinds of licenses, you can control what they are doing, their waste, and so on. But most of all, it will create jobs. And an efficient agro sector will add to our economy. 2 slides, Mr. Chairman, which is about Pakistan. I was engaged at a distance with the Karachi initiative, a couple of traders at the new fruit terminal near the superhighway. They wanted to set up a kind of an agriculture export processing zone. And their ideas were good and sound. It was about connecting farmers via collection points with one central processing unit for export, domestic market, and so on. There was quite some enthusiasm with companies who saw the benefit, who had been abroad, but in the end, it still did not work out as we had hoped. It's about the government who should play a particular role facilitating this, rather than managing a facility. Leave it to companies. So, clusters are one key factor for competitiveness, and it should be driven by public and private partners together. And at the end, I would like to put some questions, challenges on the table for discussion later. We should think about which type of clusters do we want in Pakistan. Is it for the export market, domestic? Do we want it mixed? Should we focus on quinoa? I personally don't think so, because the product is not that competitive in the global market, but we should focus. Next, it's about cooperation between companies. In Europe, we have a cooperative history. For ages, small companies work together, and that has made us strong. Sometimes in Pakistan, we rather like to compete with each other than working together. Although in the long run, we need to work together. Who takes the lead? There should be a kind of a master planning doing this. But also how to engage the government in a facilitating role, not for the duration of one term, but for 15 years. There should be continuity. Companies will only establish if they are sure that there will be a long-term lease agreement, there will be incentive package. So there should be transparent procedures for companies, attractive investment packages, and that's what we can learn from other places. And last but not least, I thought that on the agenda, it is about dovetailing the CPEC infrastructure. And in their documents, they talk about export processing zones with our master plan on clustering the agriculture sector. And somebody should take the lead in that. Thank you very much. And I hope we can build on this to have some examples of clusters later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that you can see the elements of a cluster very well. You can see the need for public-private partnerships very well. The kind of evolution that happens in these, they start simple, they get more complex, they get very creative, and links grow. So I think there's a lot of kind of powerful things if you can get the incentives going right on clusters. And so we have to untangle some of the things that will make clusters work in Pakistan. First of all, in the next presentation, Mubarik AIi is going to talk about some products that have opportunities and whether those opportunities seem to be in the domestic or international market. And this is very similar to one of the questions that Marcel posed about what products do we want to promote. So let's hear some examples on that.
Good noon, Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Chair and Vice Chancellor, PIDE University, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very much honored to be here to present some of my work which I did when I was member Planning Commission of Pakistan. First of all, I should recognize that Planning Commission has bought the idea of clusters. Marcel, we agree that this is the way to develop the agriculture sector. So first, we agree that we should go to the cluster approach. But where should we go? In what commodity, at what aspects, at what level of the value chain is important? So Planning Commission, rather than jumping in dark and say, let's start the cluster project and investing in different commodities, we say, let's first analyze and see where the potentials are, where is the possibility, so we can really, in a very planned manner, go in those areas. This project has actually, this is a feasibility study in the Planning Commission, and see where the potential and what is the cost of harnessing those potentials. So it has this two component, and I'm presenting the result of only first component, which just quantify the potentials of the cluster development at various levels. And I hope Secretary P&D will really push the project for the second stage, where we can see what is the cost of harnessing this potential. So I also would like to highlight that many of the agriculture commodities already has some type of clusters. For example, mango cluster is very, very known. Citrus cluster is there. Carrot cluster near Faisalabad is there. Even rice clusters of basmati producer around the processor is there. But I think the type of links between different stakeholders and synergically linking them to solve each other's problem is not there. So that's where the Planning Commission wanted to see, okay, we will do that, we will make appropriate investment to develop those links, but where should we go? So the first part which I'm presenting is basically the potential of developing clusters. Next, please. Next. Oh, it's mine here. So our objective is to analyze the potential in Pakistan agriculture commodities along the value chain if these are made internationally competitive. Second is, based on the analysis, identify and prioritize the high potential agriculture commodities. And third is to identify the points in the value chain where such investment is more profitable. So I believe there are two major points where the potential of developing cluster is. One is the expansion in production base within the country. How much can we expand? I assume that Pakistan should go at least to the average level of yields internationally of every crop. For example, in wheat, we are getting 2.8 tons per hectare. Average yield of the world is 3.2. So the difference can give us a potential. So at a first stage, Pakistan should accept a challenge to go at least the average yield level of the world. I'm not talking about going to the progressive yield levels, I'm not progressive farmer yield levels or the experiment yield levels, but just at an average yield level, which includes actually of many underdeveloped countries like Nepal, Bhutan, and type of things, and it should not be a big challenge. So in identifying the potential, I said, let's assume, make our yield at least equal to the world average yield level, which should be the first step. Of course, if you can develop your cluster even better, you can say 5 or 10% higher than the average yield level. So these yields can go either in the expansion of the export base. So how much can we export more, whatever we are expecting? Now, I think I assume that Pakistan export in all these commodities should go at least to the average rate of the export over production levels. The percentage of the, export over production level, that is the percentage of the production of every commodity which is exported at world level, Pakistan should reach at least to that point. So that can be give you the potential in the export expansion, and we can also make some import substitution, and whatever is left over from the expansion in production base by increasing the yield can go into the domestic markets. Similarly, the second major point where we can have the potential is improvement in the quality, and here we are saying we increase our export level or the quality of the export at least to the world average export value, which means our price of the export of every commodity should be at least equal to the average price of the export of the world. So which means we should improve our quality to that level where the average price of the world is. If our price is less, there is a potential to improve the value of that or the value chain of that commodity. And similarly, I also assume that at least 10% of the domestic production can go to the export value or the export price level, or its quality is such that it can go to the export value, export prices. So assuming this, okay, so which means production efficiency, which means Pakistan versus world average yield, and where there is a difference, we can say that there's a potential there. Trade efficiency and competitiveness, share of Pakistan's export in its total production, and compare it with the world export share in total production and try to bring it to that level. And third is the quality of international value chain, which means Pakistan export price should be equal to the world average export price. And fourth is the quality of the domestic value chain, 10% of the domestic production at Pakistan export price, and the domestic versus import price of the import. So what did we find with that assumptions? We found out that Pakistan has 38 agriculture commodities, including milk, meat, and sheep meat and beef meat and all that. So we have 38 agriculture commodities. Total value of these commodities are $45 billion, and Pakistan's share in world agriculture value is about 1.4%, and total export in billions, Pakistan, which is just a raw commodity, does not include the processed item, is 3.5 billion, and total imports, also just fresh commodities, does not include edible oils, tea, and type of things, is about 1.3 billions. And I found Pakistan's share in world agriculture export, although we are contributing 1.4% in the total production of the world, our share in the export is only 0.35%. Pakistan's share in world agriculture export is only 0.25%. And export commodities in which we are trying to make some export, or export is higher than the import, is 27, while importable commodities are about 11. I don't know what this does. Okay, I found that in 30 commodities, out of the 38 commodities, our yield is lower than the world average yields. This does not look a country where 85% is irrigated land, and we have very intensive and very good environment for agriculture production, but our yield in 30 crops is lower than the world average yields, and only in 8 commodities our yield is higher than the world average. Our wholesale prices in 25 commodities, in 25 commodities, our wholesale prices is lower than the world average. This gives you the competitiveness. In 25 commodities, at the farm level, at wholesale level, our prices are, sir, lower than the world average prices. Mean, at least at farm level, despite the lower yield, we are competitive. But in other 13 commodities, our prices are higher than the world average prices at the farm gate or wholesale level. So this actually include very distorted markets like sugarcane, like wheat, and type of things where government intervention has made the prices higher than the world average market prices. And the export prices when we reach to the export point, what happens? At the farm gate, we are competitive in 25 commodities. But when we go to the export, in 22 commodities, we throw out our commodities lower than the world average export prices. So there is some problem in the value chain. There is some problem in our commercial strategies that our commodities are fetching lower than the average export prices of the world. And only in 5 commodities, our prices are higher than the world average prices. And percentage of the production exported in 21 commodities, we are exporting lower percentage of our production than the world is exporting, right? It means we need to improve our commercial strategies, our export incentives and type of thing. And only in 6 commodities, like in basmati and in citrus, I think, we have higher percentage of the production, same as import level can give you $0.9 billion US, and also improving the quality in the domestic markets of 10% production can give you 1.4 billion. In this way, improving the quality of crops in the domestic and international markets can generate 5.9 billion versus expansion can give you 6.7. So now, we have to see that expansion and quality improvement can generate almost equal returns. Similarly, in livestock, 5.1 for the expansion for improvement in yields, and 3.3 billions in the export in the improvement in yields, and total 11.8 expansion in productions, and 9.2 billion can be generated by improvement in the quality of the produce. Not only we look the overall, but look by commodities where the potential is. For example, in wheat, most of the potential is to improving the yield, and not much in improvement in quality is there. So we do not have to invest much on the value chain level, but more on the production level. For example, if we look for example, beef, most of that 1.513 billion can be due to improvement in quality in the beef in the national and international markets, and 635 million can be by improving the yield of animals to the average level. So I think in every commodity, we know where the potential lies. If it is at the production level, at the export value chain level, at the import value chain level, or expansion in the export, or the domestic quality improvement, and where Pakistan get more in different commodities. And we have actually ranked those commodities with respect to the potentials, not only at total potential. For example, rice has the highest potential of total improvement, and then we can go where should we intervene. And in rice, and on per hectare basis also. If we look the per hectare basis, you can find that the highest potential is, for example, in cucumber, for example, in apples, or most of the potential on per hectare basis is in high value crops. So I think we have to more carefully look into, and the analysis will tell you whether the expansion is more profitable or the quality improvement is more profitable. Of course, these potentials are only, and if we could go to the livestock similarly, or the importables, we have the rank of all the commodities based on total returns of the value chain improvement and the per hectare based value chain improvements. And of course, we have to look into what is the cost of those potentials. I mean, I'm saying perhaps livestock, we can have 1.3 or 1.5 billions for the improvement in quality, but the cost of that, of harnessing that potential is much higher, maybe. So we have to look what is the cost of those potential and what is the actually, and then find out where is the highest rate of return. I hope the second phase of the analysis will come very soon from the planning P&D department, so we can focus and prioritize those commodities and see Pakistan should go. And not only that, not only identify the cost, but also identify what type of investment is needed, who will do those investments, and that's why I think P&D is trying to hire UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organizations, to do this job and identify the cost and benefits of these potential and see where really the low-hanging fruits are and where perhaps it's not possible. So the general conclusion is that great potentials of enhancing income, which is about 21 billion, exist on having the crop and animal yields and produce quality just at the world average level, just at the world average level. Pakistan should not be complacent by just world average level and should go much higher than that. But I think at this point, perhaps that assumptions can generate a lot of income to our producers as well as value chain agents. The expansion in production base and improving the value chain both has almost similar potentials. But we have to see the cost. Where the cost is higher, should we go in the expansion in production, or should we go in the improvement in quality? And if improvement in quality, where should we go for the expansion in export or improvement in the quality of the export? From the total potentials of improving value chain, which is 9.2 billion, over 50%, that is 5 billion, can be achieved by just improving the quality and export base equal to the world average level. Another 30% of the potential can be obtained by improving the quality of just 10% of the domestically traded produce equal to the export standards. And exportables have much higher potential than the importables at this stage, but we have to look the cost side as well. And fruit and vegetable crops have high per hectare potential of improvement, while cereals have relatively low per hectare potential of improvement. Thank you very much. This is all I can tell.
Thank you very much, Mubarak. I think this really helps sort of locate where potential might be. I guess the one overlay you might do on this is to ask which of these would benefit from cluster development the most. It seems to me maybe those where there's quality requirements are very important. Where there's just production growth, maybe it's less important. We have a presentation from China, and Xiaobo unfortunately had a family emergency and couldn't come today, but he's graciously provided us an annotated PowerPoint, so we'll let him do that, or let us do that on his behalf. This is about the potato cluster in China and its development. It's quite, it's sort of an interesting example.
So from the 1950s to 1990s, the Chinese government made great effort to build terrace fields and irrigation facility. Of the land compatible to terracing, 94% have been converted to terrace. So without the terrace field, it would be very difficult to plant potato. Originally, potato was not originally planted in this area. this area was very known for wheat production. Peking is very dry. The annual rainfall is only 380 millimeters compared to more than 1 in Islamabad. Potato was introduced in the 1960s as a secondary crop for coping with food shortage. I said earlier, this area had a very high poverty rate. Hunger used to be a big problem. However, initially, farmers didn't want to adopt potato production because wheat is much more appealing. It's a more popular diet. In addition, the Chinese government offered guaranteed procurement price for wheat but not potatoes in order to convince farmers of the advantage of producing potatoes. The government led wheat leaders to set up demonstration fields first. So after showing the success of potato production, other farmers started to copy and imitate potato production. So over time, the cropping area of for potato has expanded. But as the cropping area expanded, the price collapsed in 2001. So in dealing with this challenge, the government has undertaken many initiatives to expand the market, to make sure the potato can be sold to the wider domestic market. The first thing the government did is to organize the trader and the producer associations. So the associations send informants to live in major wholesale markets nationwide to collect market information and then send the price information back to the county. And then the county broadcasts the price information in local media, such as radios, TVs, and newspapers, and even on large monitors in major gathering places, such as central squares, railway, and the bus stations. So with the more readily available market information, farmers knows the true price, so they can negotiate with the traders coming to their village. So they make sure farmers are not cheated by traders. So through these kind of interventions, farmers got better price than before. And also the government has built more collection points and a market in the county. So the blue, red, and the yellow points stand for the markets built in different periods. You can see over time, the market has expanded widely to cover almost all the counties. So right now, farmers have easy access to the collection points or market. So with easy access to the market, farmers can get better prices. So with better prices, more people start to produce potato. But once again, by 2003, market crashed again. The price collapsed. So farmers couldn't sell their potato. In responding to the crisis, the local government came up two more interventions. The first is trying to overcome the transportation bottlenecks. In ending, most of the potatoes are transported away by railway, but there was a railway quota, freight car quota. Initially, it was only 1,500 per year in 2003. So after the crisis, the local government talked to one of their local persons who used to work in the Ministry of Railway, and then to the provincial government as a deputy governor and asked him for help. So through his help, through his connections in the Ministry of Railway, the number of quotas have been increased to more than 3,600 in 2004, and further doubled to more than 6,000 in 2009. So with a greater number of freight cars, more potatoes can be transported at a cheaper price, at a lower cost, to major domestic markets like Shanghai and Guangzhou. Another intervention is to encourage farmers to build indigenous storage facility at their home. So this picture shows 4 types of storages. On average, the government subsidizes 200 yuan per storage. Right now, the county can storage more than 0.4 million, about 0.4 million tons of potato. On average, every household owned more than 2 storages. So as people can store their potato for longer period, all the way to the Chinese New Year in the next February, so farmers, the transportation bottleneck can largely be lessened. Also, farmers can sell better price around the Chinese New Year period. This also help expand the market size. With stable and slightly increasing potato price, more farmers convert their land to potato production. But once again, there's a need to process the surplus of potato which cannot be sold outside. So in the next step, the government intensified their effort to attract processing plants. In order to attract the first movers, the local government offered a package. First, free land. Second, subsidized bank loans. Third, guaranteed stable potato supply for the processing plants. So in 2004, the local government successfully recruited 2 processing plants to settle in this county. It turned out both of them were extremely profitable. So when other processing plants saw the success, they quickly followed suit and moved in. So by 2009, there were already 12 processing plants. Now it can process about 1/3 of total output. So in 2004, the first 2 plants produced only starch. Quickly, the production line have become more diversified, including such as modified starch for industry use, frozen fresh fries for fast food chains, potato chips, potato flour, even export to the Middle East and the Southeast Asia.
Well, sorry about that. It was a little hard to hear. This is really a good story. I guess the last slide gives the citation. You can read about it in World Development 2014. Why don't you put that slide up? It's a good story of a cluster that grew from almost nothing to one that has become very diversified and very effective throughout China. Very strong role of the local government was included in this, and I think a whole transformation of that region as a result of this potato cluster. So it's a really good success story. I'm sorry that the audio didn't work out that well, but read about it in World Development. Thank you. You guys want to make some comments? We'll have the secretary make a few comments, and then we'll close the session.
Well, moderator, vice chancellor, panelists, and distinguished scholars, it is a pleasure to be part of this session. Agriculture is a very important subject. Since our school days, we've been reading it as 70% of our economy, backbone of economy. Unfortunately, after the 1960s decade, agriculture has seen a downslide in the country. More so not because of the lack of potential, but because of lack of governance and lack of management. I have heard the papers, presentations which are of quality, giving ideas, but on the other hand, I feel sad that in our country, which is blessed with so much of resources, just because we are not able to manage agriculture sector properly, our situation has been going through a roller coaster type. This potato model, this cluster, or any other for that matter, I feel that these models, these clusters, in latent form are available here also. But unfortunately, the managers who are managing these situations have not been bringing them to the fore, have not been encouraging that. Needless to say that agriculture is the basis of our economy. Agriculture is at the heart of our 5-year plan. We are in the process of formulating new 5-year plan, the next 5-year plan. We need input. And I believe the presentations made here, the talk which we have heard here, I would request the Vice Chancellor and the organizers of this conference to provide us with valuable, tangible, practical inputs, which must and should attract our policy planners and our implementers to adopt those practices for bringing about a change in the agricultural production of the country. Last year we had 3.5% of agriculture growth. Our economists were very happy. The chief economist said this is optimum growth. I said no, we should go beyond. And I'm insisting to a very experienced Deputy Chairman Planning Commissioner, Mr. Davies, who is a treasure for us, for the country, a man of international experience and wisdom, a man who's an expert in the field of agriculture. I strongly believe, I'm not an agriculturist in any form, but I am a strong believer on the basis of my primary school education. The 3.5% is not the optimum growth for Pakistan. We can achieve much more. It is only making out proper policies and implementing it. The superhighway, you call in vernacular sabzi mandi, or the agriculture market, the wholesale market in Karachi, or in Islamabad, or in any other city of Pakistan, these all exist. These farmer bodies exist. Agriculture chambers exist. Landlords, middlemen, their organizations exist. But we are not able to ensure transparency. We are not able to ensure implementation of what our research people are providing us for action. And that is the gap between the academia and the practical implementers. That gap is to be bridged. Pakistan can claim of many success stories and make world-class presentations. We in the Planning Division and the Commission are highly sensitized to the importance of this subject. As Dr. Mubarak mentioned, clusters is very close to us. We have a specific project now dealing with clusters, and after today's session, I stand motivated, more motivated, to push that project further. I also acknowledge the presence of the Pakistan Society of Development Economists. I was discussing it with the worthy Vice Chancellor, who was a very down-to-earth person. And I requested, and he's also said, and I have requested him to activate this body. For a country, Society of Development Economists is a big name, and that should be a more vibrant, forthcoming organization. I think PIDE, who has a special relationship with the ministry since the beginning, needs to act as a catalyst for reactivating this Pakistan Society of Development Economists, because we have luminaries in that society, and they can give us good ideas for implementation. Ladies and gentlemen, researchers, students, fellows, our only problem is good and transparent implementation. Things are available in books and plans. And to the researchers of PIDE, my request would be to suggest actionable research papers, short research papers for our ministry, for the Ministry of National Food Security. My second request would be to concentrate more on the poultry, livestock, and fisheries. Unfortunately, these being part of agriculture sector get a low priority, whether it is the government sector or whether it is any research organization. These need to be pushed up and considered as important as our green agriculture is. It's a pleasure being here. Appreciate economists, researchers, professors coming from overseas, and I wish you all success. But my plea would be to get actionable research and recipes for bringing much improved agricultural growth, not only in the field of agriculture, but also in other areas which you will be discussing during this 3-day conference. Thank you very much.
First of all, we are really thankful to Chairperson and panelists to give us insightful ideas about agricultural reforms, modernization, and cluster-based agro-business development. So I would request Dr. Asad Zaman to hand over souvenir to the Chairperson of our session, Mr. Shoaib Ahmed Siddiqui.
Thank you very much.
Now I would request Mr. Shoaib Ahmed Siddiqui to present souvenirs to our panelist and moderator. First of all, I will invite Stephen Davies, who is Senior Research Fellow, IFPRI. Mr. Muhammad Ejaz Qureshi, Research Program Manager, Agricultural Development Policy, ACIAR, Australia. Mr. Mubarik AIi, former member, Food Security and Climate Change Planning Commission of Pakistan. Mr. Marcel Stallen, Chief Technical Advisor, Project Manager, Balochistan FAO. Now I would request Mr. Stephen Davies to receive souvenir on behalf of Xiaobo Zhang, Professor, National School of Development, Peking University, China. Thank you very much.